Welcome to the With You Rugby Podcast, designed to give you an in-depth look at the United States Rugby Foundation, including our grant programs and recipients, fundraisers, events, and much more. Now let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Vizard, President of the United States Rugby Foundation, and I want to welcome you to another one of our With You podcasts. Now, one of the fundamental pillars of the US Rugby Foundation over the years has been youth and high school rugby. We provided grants for them throughout our whole 60-year existence. And earlier this year, we awarded our largest grant ever, $100,000 to USA Youth and High School Rugby Organization. And joining us today is USA Youth and High School Rugby Organization's Executive Director, Giovanni Vaglietti. Welcome, Gio. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me. Thanks for that intro, and we're very appreciative for being on today, but also just for the grants in general. So from the Youth and High School Committee, thank you for all of that.
Yeah, sure. Looking forward to it. Now, before we talk about your organization, Gio, let's talk about you. Tell us about your upbringing a little bit and some of the sports you played as a kid.
Yeah, so I was born in South Africa, so I come from that part of the world. The name is Italian. My grandparents and parents were from Italy. They immigrated to South Africa just after the Second World War, and so that's the name and that's the accent of those pieces put together. So I think being from South Africa, we always play many sports. So rugby is obviously one of them. So I played a bit of rugby in high school. I played cricket also, another one of those non-American sports from the Commonwealth of England. And then soccer, and also I played quite a lot of tennis growing up. At around 13 or 14, I decided to go the route of focusing just on tennis. There was the opportunity to get a full scholarship to a college here in the United States. And so, with some of the other sports, unfortunately, there wasn't that opportunity, but there was with tennis. So, I kind of packed away the other sports and decided that tennis was going to be the route because it was going to provide me with an education at the end of the day. So that was the reason why I went down that road, got recruited, played Division I college tennis for 4 years, played at San Diego State, and then after that, I went on and got my master's degree in sports management, which has kind of led me down the path of where I am today.
Did you play rugby while you're at State?
No, we had to stay off the anything dangerous route of injuries that we couldn't put ourselves in any of those situations. But we definitely, I was very, very pleasantly surprised that there was that activity of rugby within the United States. I to be honest, I was not expecting that, but it was very cool. We'd walk past going to practice, and we would see the state team there practicing and being on those fields, and it always brought a warm heart and a warm smile to see that activity going on. So it was very fun. It was very fun. I wanted to get involved, but coach was no, no, not gonna happen. So that was unfortunate.
Well, let's turn our attention now to your organization. What spurred on the formation of USA Youth and High School Rugby Organization?
Yeah, I think it was a positive to come out of an unfortunate negative, which was the bankruptcy of USA Rugby in the early part of 2020 and the start of COVID. The old SROs, the state rugby organizations that were involved, under the USA Rugby umbrella for the youth side of things, got together at that time. And there was very much a need for direct representation, and there was also a need for continuity and for the youth and high school committee, the community to come together and be together, during that period. So that really spurred on the formation of youth and high school at that time. There was subcommittees that were formed from the various states, having some representation on there. in order to get the bylaws work done, in order to get the formation of the organization up and going, to kind of work with USA Rugby as they were moving through the bankruptcy and all of those pieces. So I think from the unfortunate negative came a really strong positive that the youth and high school could have, all the state's organizations under one umbrella, have something that was our own at that point, and I think that has ultimately been an incredible positive step in the right direction, and we had all unity, we had unity at that time. And still to this day, everybody, voted on the formation of the organization, voted on the bylaws, had input into the bylaws, and could set, how the future direction of the youth game in the country. So it was incredibly positive for that to happen.
And what's the mission of your organization?
I think the mission is to provide a fun and safe environment for the development of youth rugby in the country. I think another really strong mission is to develop well-rounded individuals, both on and off the field. So that's the overarching principle, but there's quite a lot that goes on in between all of that. But yeah, I think from the start, its formation is now we're getting into basically our third year. I think the first year was a complete write-off with COVID. Most states didn't play rugby, and then our registration cycles are September 1 through August 31st. So I think last year we can call our first true year. So, I think from myself and from the board that exists was to, provide a strong foundation for growth. And at that time was, I think it's providing stability for the state-based organizations, giving them a platform, forming policies and procedures that would work well across the country, keeping everybody unified, moving in the right direction. So that was a strong part of what I did in the first year. And then I think from here on, it's, working towards our 2 World Cups and also the LA Olympics in 2028. So a lot of excitement ahead, but we needed to put the foundations in place. And it was very rocky after COVID, very rocky for everybody, just numbers. We're nowhere, states weren't able to play for a year. So yeah, it was just putting that foundation back in place.
And you touched on a little bit here in this last answer, but what is your role within the organization then as executive director? What are your duties?
Yeah, I think so. So my role is quite multifaceted. I work predominantly with the states, so I help the states in membership. So registration systems, all that type of stuff. But I think more important, maybe potentially more importantly, is just helping the states with some of the problems that come up and crop up, helping them, set direction, set their targets, and just being an overall support to them. I think something that's really difficult, for the game of rugby in general is that it's really volunteer driven. So that has a lot of positives because you have so many people with their hearts in the right place and doing, so much for the game, but, they're not, they have their own full-time jobs in a lot of places. And so it's being there to, kind of fill out that gap a little bit for them and give them some extra additional support and wherever they need it. And that can be, from little things to big things. It can be anywhere in between. So that's been a huge focus of my first year. I think I'm like 13 months into it now. Mm-hmm. From youth and high school, there was no employees in the first year. It was all board driven, which was natural, I think, natural progression from the organization. And then, now it's shifting our focus to building programming to trying to achieve some of the longer term goals.
Is there one common challenge that a lot of teams face around the country?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is based around competition. I think when you get competition involved, it's having the right rules and structures in place so that everybody feels, all the players and coaches and parents, everybody feels like it's a fair structure. That varies from state to state depending upon what conditions are on the ground. Maybe they have a smaller U8 division and they kind of have to adjust to there, or they have a huge U8 division and they have to adjust. To that. How do you set scheduling? How do you set the rules for the year? How do you set your calendars to fit in with all of that? I think that it's a lot of the challenges surround the competition structures in the various different states, and just the states trying to get that right for everybody as this kind of grows. And then from one year to another, that completely changes. Then one year you have 20 teams, and the next year you have 30, and then another year you have 15, and it's a little bit over the board. So it's always having to be on our toes and think through these problems as they arise with always the best intentions and best solutions that we could possibly have.
Mm-hmm. And who are some of the other people involved with USA Youth and High School Rugby?
Yeah, so we started at the formation. I think there was a real need for direct representation. So at that time within the bylaws, it was written that the 50 states would be divided into 7 different regions. So, roughly 7 organizations under one region, and then there would be a board member for each one of those regions, and that were voted on directly by those states within that region. And they all have roughly the same registration numbers. So there's not one that's vastly huger than another. So we do have 7 board members. Our president is David Poole, and then our representative on the US Rugby board is Bill Stevens, and Bill comes out of the Midwest region. But yes, we do have. There's another 5 members. There's Northeast, Southeast, all the way across the country. So everybody's critical and vital in that. They're the direct voice to their states. Whenever the states can have those conversations with those board members if there's growth initiatives, if there's there's anything that comes up, they're the kind of themselves and myself are the point people. So I think it's serving as a good, it's really serving well at the moment to have that structure. I think everybody feels like they have a voice and a vote within the country at the moment. So that's always positive. That's what we want. It's all we could ever ask for.
Mm-hmm. And what is your relationship to or with USA Rugby?
So we are the Youth and High School Council under the USA Rugby larger umbrella. So under that bankruptcy, there was basically 3 umbrellas: youth and high school, college, and adult. We're our own 501c3 nonprofit, but we do fit under the USA Rugby umbrella. I work closely with the national office on membership, and then also with Jonathan in operations. And so there's that piece, the day-to-day operations, and then there's the overall piece, as I mentioned, Bill being our direct representative on the board of directors for USA Rugby. So all of us in the youth community have a say in what goes on. We have knowledge of what's going on at the national, and so that's our role. So we work with them closely. We're under the umbrella, but we are our own separate organization.
And what are the short range goals of the organization?
Yeah, I think just I touched on it briefly there. So just to reiterate, I think we were setting a foundation in year 1, getting everybody stable post-COVID, putting in place the right policies and procedures, the right membership structures, the registration platform structures, all of that good stuff. And then we have started to dabble in setting up programming, such as the one that we set up with the foundation. Growth initiatives that are structured along that. But I think the short range was definitely putting a foundation in place so that we could have a strong base to build from, and then over the course of the next 10 years at least, and then obviously way beyond those next two World Cups. So we needed to put the right policies in place. We needed to get the trust back. I'm not sure, I think there was probably a lot of discontent previously, obviously going through bankruptcy, and then I think that's another one of the positives of the youth community having its own organization, because we could be under the umbrella, but we could really drive the narrative on our own and drive our own initiatives the way that we would like to see it collectively as our community, and so that was very important. Some of the very cool things to come along. I mean, I think I've been working on coaching education now for a little while. We'll have a few announcements to come shortly, but that's been a strong drive. So growing numbers, growing the coaching development, continued education, and also numbers. But the numbers piece and that piece sits with USA Rugby largely. I think we can deal with continued education, but obviously the World Rugby relationship with USA Rugby means that those certifications for referees and coaches are done with USA Rugby and all of that, and that's a very, very important structure. So yeah, that's what we got on the short-term agenda, and then there's a lot.
and you mentioned the 2031 and 33 Rugby World Cups that we'll be hosting here.
Yes.
And you touched on it a little bit, but what are some of the long-term goals of the organization?
Yeah, it's probably it's a generic statement, but I think it's just growing numbers. I think our numbers are strong, but they can for how great of a sport rugby is and what it provides kids that we've all been involved with this game for so long know what it does. It really should be exponentially higher, and so that's going to be the main driver is growth. Putting a couple of zeros on what our registration numbers already look like, getting rugby balls in more hands in more areas across the country, and some of that we've already started. But I think the next 6 months, I know that we will be working closely with USA Rugby and subsequently World Rugby on putting pen to paper on what the next 10 years is going to look like, and what each one of those 10 years looks like. So there's a lot to do. I mean, I think there's that 2031 and 2033 seems like a long way out, but it's really it's around the corner, in the grand scheme of things, and those plans and initiatives we need to get going on immediately, and we have some already in place and working on, and then there will be others. But yeah, I think we've got a very heavy workload over the next few months to get in everything that we need to leading up into these events.
Cool. Hey, let's talk about the grant the foundation provided you earlier this year. Can you tell us more about the program and the parameters involved? Yeah,
just a really important programming. I mean, so the grant was for $100,000, as you mentioned, over a course of a period to get new high school programs off the ground and provide them with seed funding. Along with that, with that seed funding, I think the parameters that are important, because I think we all want to see legacy. We want to see sustainability of these programs. I think we want to see long-term success. These programs being around for the next 100 years, right? So some of the parameters that we've been looking at is exactly that, sustainability. And then along with that is financial forecasting, financial models, like how do these programs, once they receive the funds, how do how do they keep going, and how do they sustain themselves eventually. So that's another key piece of it. Just going back to our mission of providing a fun and safe environment, we've also looked at how these programs are establishing their rugby culture. So, how are they dealing with the kids? How are they dealing with the high school players? What are they teaching them? Are they teaching them the foundations of what rugby is? Respect, discipline, solidarity, inclusion, all of that through. So we look for that planning, and then we look for what the connection to the high school is. So it has that high school, have they signed off on the program? What support is the high school going to be providing to that team that's going to be an on-campus team? Are they providing them with fields? Is there some equipment that they may have? Just looking at the whole pictures, and then kind of moving through the gears from there. I think that covers that all.
Yeah. There's already been a first round of applications and funding has been distributed. What was the process for selecting those first programs this past fall?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we went through and funded 5 programs so far. So that was the start to kind of the overall mission of trying to get to about 20 programs. The first step for me was going to my state organizations and working through the process with them, just sitting down and looking at the team, how they fit into the landscape, how they, what their relationship with that team would be, just providing the overall support, making sure that the states knew that there was a potentially new team looking to get up and going, who that individual was, connecting the dots on that so that, the applicant within that state knew who their local organizing committee and body was, and getting them set off with a strong relationship. And then just going through the different pieces, as I mentioned, do they have the right funding in place? Do they have the right fundraising models in place? Do they have a good relationship with the school? I mean, some weren't necessarily new schools, so those we had to unfortunately eliminate, because that's a cornerstone of what we were trying to do. It's brand new programs. I think just making sure that all those parameters were aligned, and where they weren't, trying to help get them aligned. Because I think the intention is, we don't want to say no to anybody. I think that's important. So trying to get them, if they're missing elements, trying to help them get those right elements in place for a successful, application.
You talked about the school supporting a rugby program. What about, I always heard or thought that, getting the okay by the football coach and program, that it's important. Is it still, pretty important that the football team buys into this and other sports groups on the campus?
I think it is. I think it is important. It's definitely the time that I've been in rugby that has shifted. I think when I first was involved with rugby, a number of years ago, there was some apprehension from the football. Not that's a generalization, obviously, but there were pockets. But I think that with the exposure of rugby, with the football coaches understanding that how rugby can also play such a vital role in their own success, and just how much joy it brings to the high school players, and any level, but for the specifics of this conversation, just how much joy it brings. I mean, all of a sudden you have players that have never necessarily touched the ball on the field and football are now key running at people in the rugby field, and so once the coaches have seen what a positive role it plays, just for their own football program, they've really been accepting of it. It is part of the question, in the application, and I think because the football programs are obviously really powerful on campus. If the coaches if they don't like rugby, then there could be a hurdle, to getting off the ground, and naturally, the football players would be on at least on the male side of things would be natural rugby participants. And so those two things do tie hand in hand. But the positive is that there is definitely a shift in, yes, rugby is an incredibly positive aspect to the school, and then also to the football programs where appropriate. So yeah, definitely.
Okay, so we talked about the one round of funding we had so far, and what's the future hold? Do you expect more applications coming? What's the next application round? And for those groups looking to form a rugby team on high school, what do they need to get in place?
Yeah, so we're looking at opening up the next application round in the beginning of January. So Monday, January 2nd, we'll be opening up a new round for approximately 6 weeks. I think we'll close that up in the middle of February 14th, somewhere around about there. But that gives us another window to get some funding to new programs that will be looking to play in the springtime. So we'll, that's the next step there. So we'll see. I think we could, a target here is to get another 5 programs funded, hopefully more. I mean, let's see what kind of applications we get in. And again, just putting under the same parameters, what the financial forecasts, what the fundraising forecasts look like, what the sustainability of that program is going to be, and their tie-in with the school, and if they're a new program. Those are broadly what the parameters are. So we're not going to change anything in that aspect. We're just going to open up a new window and look to get another set of teams up and going for some spring when the weather clears for most of the country, and they can get back on the field again for March. So.
Well, the US Rugby Foundation is looking forward to being part of what's going on, the building of high school rugby across the country. And Gio, I want to thank you for your time today, for telling us a little bit more about the USA Youth and High School Rugby Organization, and for taking the half hour or so to be with us today.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you so much to the foundation for this grant. It's very unique and one of a kind, and we're so appreciative for all the foundation's work. So thank you so much.
All right, yeah, thank you, and David and the rest of the group for what you're doing. And folks, that's going to do it for this edition of our With You podcast. Thank you all for taking part and for coming in and listening to Giovanni Vaglietti tell you a little bit more about USA Youth and High School Rugby Organization. For information about the US Rugby Foundation, please go to our website at usrugbyfoundation.org. Sign up for our electronic newsletter so you stay in touch with all the things going on with the foundation. Until next time, everyone, stay safe.